Namaskar and welcome to the Gandhi Katha, hosted Embassy of India on Gandhiji's philosophy of truth, non-violence, and well-being on the occasion of the India's 74th Independence Day and the commemoration of the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. According to my understanding, Mahatma Gandhi's life was an epic of faith and endeavor. His faith was in truth, the ultimate reality of truth, and he endeavored to attain it through nonviolence throughout his life till the very last breath. The deeper the faith, the greater was the endeavor. Gandhiji said that truth is God. Faith in truth led Mahatma Gandhi to two other realizations. If God is omnipresent, and if each human being were an aspect of God, then each person was capable of truth, of being good, and doing good to others. His endeavor throughout his life was devoted to the search of that element of truth, to awaken it, and to nurture it. This is why he could feel oneness with everyone. For most of us, this realization does not set in easily. Because of the understanding of oneness for Gandhiji, he had no enemies. He did not want to settle scores with anyone, and he did not want to take any revenge. He merely extended his love, compassion, and respect for everyone. This was one of the main traits of Gandhiji. Perhaps the greatest source of strength for Mahatma Gandhi was in his faith in God. Truth was the deepest and the most complete form of God. The faith gave him the constant awareness that he was nothing to be but an instrument in his hands. He was to go wherever he was led. For him, the guidance of God constituted two things. One, he had to walk on the path enlightened by truth that was available to him in whatever measures and form. Two, he had to constantly gaze inwards and find inspiration. Mahatma Gandhi used to begin and end his day with prayers. And these were prayers from all the religions. He had said, begin your day with prayer and make it so soulful that it may remain with you until the evening. Close the day with prayer so that you may have a peaceful night free from dreams and nightmares. Another aspect that gave him the strength was the clarity that he had acquired from years of experiments and reflection on the philosophical content of Satyagraha. He was clear that Satyagraha was based on the principle of Advaita, of non duality. If the same essence of soul encompasses all human beings, it would allow a Satyagrahi to become one with the oppressor. Any failure to touch and reach out to the opponent would be a failure of the Satyagrahi and not a shortcoming of the philosophy of Satyagraha. And this he used in all the Satyagrahas in South Africa and India. Moreover, with the experience that he had over the years, he had begun to see love as a very powerful and positive force. The challenge before him was to use this force with effect. The bigger the challenge, the more enthused Gandhiji was by it. Gandhiji realized that untruth, injustice, oppression, and tyranny last only as long as their victims accept them. The moment one learns to say no to untruth and injustice, their edifice collapses immediately. This was true for the political, the economic, and the social order. Gandhiji's philosophy uniquely combined humility with self confidence. He merged the ability and the wish to comprehend the political, economic, and social conditions with his incessant desire to measure himself on the scale of truth. Today, in the field of international conflict resolution, people are interested in the effectiveness of peaceful means for ending disputes, as demonstrated by Mahatma Gandhi, compared with the use of force or violence. In peace building context, scholars and practitioners are seeking to integrate authentic, indigenous, and local cultural methods of conflict analysis and intervention. People are finding inspiration in Mahatma Gandhi's ideals and his lifelong efforts of peace building and conflict resolution through interfaith dialogues and harmony. Throughout his life, Mahatma Gandhi was engaged in finding solutions through dialogues. Gandhi had deep respect for world religion and devoted and developed lifelong friendship with people from different religions. He took time to study, reflect, and engage with different faiths and faith communities. Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy primarily is truth centered. Truth was the first and foremost principle in Gandhian philosophy. Gandhiji's life was a continuous series of experiments with truth, and that is the name he gave to his autobiography as well. He applied his philosophy to his own life through selfless service and to practical social and political service through his nonviolent civil disobedience campaigns, which he termed as satyagraha. But truth itself appeared opaque and obscure. He came to regard the inner voice, the voice of the conscience, as truth and molded his life and actions accordingly. Purity of consciousness requires sadhana, penance, and this he had learnt during his days in South Africa. His quest for truth was incessant. He made public admissions of his follies and proved himself further. He tried the utmost to cultivate humility necessary for the quest. He sought the awareness that penetrated the layers of ego which covers the vision of truth. To understand Gandhiji's thought and philosophy, one must understand him as a whole and not in parts. His thoughts on religion, economy, education, health, society, politics, environment, literature, and culture needs to be studied and understood and then adopted according to the context. His life is filled with many kinds of challenges, solutions, and achievements. He used truth as an experiment, not only in politics, but in his personal life too. For Gandhiji, truth is the relative truth of truthfulness in thought, word, and deed. And the absolute truth is the ultimate reality. The ultimate truth is God and morality, the moral laws and code, its basis. Non-violence, far from meaning Mere peacefulness or the absence of overt violence is understood by Gandhiji to denote active love. Gandhiji's nonviolence stems from two main points. Firstly, it if according to the divine reality all life is one, then all violence committed towards another is violence towards oneself, towards the collective, whole self, and thus self destructive and counter to the universal law of life, which is love. Secondly, Gandhiji believed that non-violence is the most powerful force in existence. Had violence been superior to non-violence, humankind would have long ago succeeded in destroying itself. The human race certainly could not have progressed as far as it has, even if universal justice remains far off the horizon. From both viewpoints, nonviolence or love is regarded as the highest law of humankind. Gandhian philosophy is the religious and social ideas adopted and developed by Gandhiji in three continents, that is Asia, Europe, and South Africa. From very early in life, Gandhiji understood the universe to be an organic whole. Gandhiji's philosophy exists on several planes: the spiritual or religious, moral, educational, political, economic, social, individual, and collective. The three cardinal principles of Mahatma Gandhi's thought are truth, non-violence, and purity of means. His definition of truth was very simple: utter as you think and act as you utter. Non-violence for him was not merely non-killing, but not to hurt anybody in thought, word, and speech. Purity of means meant that if your goal is pure, then the means to achieve the goals must also be pure. Mahatma Gandhi is the greatest apostle of peace and non-violence the world has seen after Gautama Buddha and Christ. His notion of peace is focused on tolerance, forgiveness, compassion, oneness, truth force, love force, and soul force through self suffering and sacrifice. Gandhiji had said that if we have no charity and no tolerance, we shall never be able to settle our differences amicably, and therefore will always submit to the arbitration of a third party. Many of today's conflict management techniques and resolution process have a clear shadow of what and how Gandhi had seen international issues in his time. Now I will play the Gandhi Katha hymn in Hindi that elaborates on Gandhiji's definition of truth as being as having harmony between thoughts, words, and deeds. And the lyrics are Man Vani Karma Se Satya Hi Tu Bol.
मन वाणी कर्म में सत्य ही तू बोल, मन वाणी कर्म में सत्य ही तू बोल, जीवन में मंगल के द्वार दे तू खोल, जीवन में मंगल के द्वार दे तू खोल, ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति का हो सम्यक विधान, ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति का हो सम्यक विधान, सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुमधुर गान, सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुमधुर
Gandhiji was the conscience keeper of humanity. That his ideas will be an inspiration for all of us at all times and in all ages, as individuals and as a society, is beyond any doubt. He was an epoch maker, one who could sow the seeds for the next generation from the fruits of the previous one. Mahatma Gandhi is the most practical visionary, a powerful visionary, and a practical idealist from the first half of the last century, whose life is a role model for all of us. But the effort has to begin from a point where you are standing. That is what made all of Mahatma Gandhi's idealist actions practical, and he can be truly called a man of action. But it does not only mean that he was very busy. What we mean is the action of putting ideas or beliefs into practice more than anything else was the driving force in Gandhiji's life. The answer for Mahatma Gandhi was always found in action. He had said, "An ounce of practice is worth more than tons of preaching." Albert Einstein, the greatest scientist of the first half of the 20th century, had called Mahatma Gandhi as the supreme practical leader for change, and listen into his voice.
I believe that Gandhi's views were the most enlightened of all the political men in our time. We should strive to do things in his spirit, not to use violence in fighting for our cause, but by non-participation in anything you believe is evil.
He had also famously said that generations to come will scarce believe that such a man like this, in flesh and blood, ever walked on this earth. And I am happy to tell you today that I was born in Sevagram Ashram, established by Gandhiji in 1936. My father was very inspired by Gandhiji from his student days, and he joined the freedom struggle and stayed in the ashram. After Gandhiji passed away in 1948, for the next 5 decades or more, my parents and all of us walked on the path that Gandhiji had shown to humanity. So, what I'm telling you today is based on what my father had told me, my own understanding and experience of Gandhiji and the Gandhian way of life, and what it is that I want to convey to the entire world through Gandhi Katha. But if you want to understand Gandhiji, you will have to understand him not only with the intellect, but also from the emotional part of you and from the acts from his life. Usually, people see him with different perspectives. Some think of Gandhiji as mostly a politician, but at the same time, some would think of him as a saint. And there are others who will think of Gandhiji as a nation builder. He may be all of this, but I think when we consider to understand Gandhi, we have to try to find out what is the common stream in all these different aspects of life that you see in his personality. One was his commitment to values, and the second one was efficiency in the kind of work that he did. This is part of his comprehensiveness, and there was a unique mix of enthusiasm on one hand and patience on the other hand. Mahatma Gandhi has made significant and seminal contributions that span across such disciplines as economics, spirituality, conflict resolution, international peace, civil rights, education, politics, journalism, communication, writing, and strategic management skills, and many more. At that time, the most harmful and destructive impact on the world was that of imperialism, modern industrialization, violence, war, materialism, and the greed for controlling the world. Mahatma Gandhi advised the world to shun these seven social sins in his speech on October 22nd, 1925. Politics without principle, wealth without work, commerce without ethics, knowledge without character, pleasure without conscience, science without morality, and worship without sacrifice. In my opinion, Mahatma Gandhi has left the most powerful and strong imprint on the humanity of the world. He had said, "My life is my message." William James Durant, the American writer, historian, and philosopher, best known for his story of civilization, spoke some most inspirational words about Mahatma Gandhi, and I quote, "Not since Buddha has India so revered any man, not since Saint Francis of Assisi has any life known to history been so marked by gentleness, disinterestedness, simplicity of soul, and forgiveness of enemies. We have the astonishing phenomenon of a revolution led by a saint. As a guide to action, the objective of Gandhian philosophy is to transform the individual and society in accordance with the principles of truth, nonviolence, and purity of means. The historic task before humankind is to progress towards the creation of a nonviolent political, economic, and social order and bring about change by nonviolent struggle. I must tell you that many people have taken up the cudgels against injustice by getting inspired by him and have followed the path of nonviolence. Others have followed his environmental credo, and still others have been deeply touched by his spiritual life. The new generation is eager to understand more about the greatest man of the last century who made such a huge impact on humanity and inspired many leaders such as Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela, Father Desmond Tutu, Father Kunz, Saint Teresa, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, Caesar Chavez, George Bernard Shaw, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and many, many others. Arnold Toynbee, the leading historian and philosopher of history, had said, "The generations into which I happen to have been born has not only been Hitler's generation in the West and Stalin's in Russia, it has also been Gandhi's in India, and it can already be forecast with some confidence that Gandhi's effect on human history is going to be far greater and more lasting than Stalin's or Hitler's." So I will now play a Gandhi Katha, Dhun or hymn about Gandhiji's thought on non-possession, non-attachment, and trusteeship. It is called "Na Yah Tera, Na Yah Mera, Ishwar Ka Yah Raj Hai."
नायः तेरा नायः मेरा नायः तेरा नायः मेरा ईश्वर का यह राज है ईश्वर का यह राज है ईश्वर का जग ईश्वर का है
Though Gandhiji's role and contribution to the political arena are well known, what is less known is his contribution towards health and wellness and serving humanity in any kind of health emergencies. As the world is reeling under the impact of coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic, and in such a time of crisis, we must learn from Mahatma Gandhi, from his practices of wellness, of body, mind, and spirit for coping up and staying safe mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually during and after the coronavirus COVID 19 pandemic. Gandhiji used to remain positive under all circumstances, and that was his main trait. He had faced many challenges in life. I think as the world is reeling under the impact of COVID-19 pandemic and everyone is affected, it is important to face it humbly, with reverence to the virus, with gratitude, prayer, and surrender to the divine forces which are beyond our control, fearlessly, intelligently, and with a positive outlook towards life. The more positive we, the ordinary people, will remain, the sooner we'll be able to take this situation in an auspicious direction. For Gandhiji, this was his way of life. He was a firm believer in the principle that a healthy mind keeps the body healthy, and he stressed on the importance of a healthy lifestyle and positive thinking. Mahatma Gandhi had made the prophetic assertion that seems to have created appreciative resonance all around the world. We have to make truth and non-violence not matters for mere individual practice, but for practice by groups and communities and nations. That at any rate is my dream. I shall live and die in trying to realize it. My faith helps me to discover new truth every day. Ahimsa or non-violence is the attribute of the soul and therefore to be practiced by everyone in all affairs of life. And that was his environmental credo also. And that was his wellness mantra too. I will end today's Gandhi Katha with the Sanskrit verse, which is a peace benediction for the universal welfare. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Let all be happy. Let all be healthy. Let all experience auspiciousness. Let no one be overwhelmed by grief. Om, peace, peace, peace. I thank the Embassy of India, Brasilia, for hosting my Gandhi Katha today. My special thanks are to all of you who have joined online and have given me the most precious gift that you can give, that is, of your time. With Gandhiji's blessings, who had said that peace is the only positive force which will lead us from darkness towards light, I will end with the Gandhi Katha Dhun or hymn which says, May there be auspicious good, may there be good, may the earth be auspicious, may the sky be auspicious, may every particle on earth be auspicious.
मंगल हो शुभ मंगल हो शुभ मंगल 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 हो शुभ मंगल हो शुभ मंगल हो शुभ मंगल 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 हो Gandhi